Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1 GV da 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 dit da. I am going to explain some safety issues that go along with a Kite Zepp or Kite balloon antenna. Again, if there's a fairly strong wind, you use a parafoil kite. Moderate wind, a delta wing or delta conine kite, preferably 9-foot wingspan on those. And if there's no wind at all, a helium balloon. Well, there are at least 4 issues that I can identify for an antenna like this, and the bands that it's most applicable for are 160 and 80 meters. This is the basic setup, simplified a little from the other video because this does not have to be 1/4 of a wavelength if you have an antenna tuner, preferably one that can handle a balanced line such as a special tuner made by a company called Palstar. It's pricey, but it's worth it if you want to get on these bands with this type of antenna. The first thing you have to do is to make sure that it cannot fall on any kind of a power line. Okay, so no falling on power lines or other people's property or streets or any place where it could cause a problem for someone else. Ideally, it should fall entirely on your property, meaning you probably have to live out in the country on a farm or something to make this work. But that's mandatory. You cannot allow this thing to fall on a power line for obvious reasons. If it falls on the street, a car will drive over it and it'll get tangled up in the wheels of that car, and you'll be liable for the expense to repair that car, etc., etc., etc. All kinds of bad things can happen if you don't take this precaution. The second precaution that you have to take is to have some way to discharge electrostatic buildup, because you're going to get a lot of it in an antenna this long. A half a wavelength on 160, for example, is about 270 feet. And 1/4 of a wavelength on that band is about 130, 135 feet for the open wire line, preferably ladder line or window line, that you're going to need. And if it's longer than that, of course, this whole shebang will be longer than that. That's a lot of wire high up in the air with no way to discharge it from the far end. So you're going to have to make sure that this tuner has coils that either short both of these conductors to ground inside it, or you're going to have to use large inductors here to get that thing grounded. Grounded for DC, but not for RF. You must do that or you're going to regret it someday. It's going to wreak havoc with your system. And for crying out loud, don't ever fly an antenna like this anywhere near a thunder shower, or even if there's a chance of thunder snow taking place. So you're going to have to find a way to do that, to keep this thing at DC ground potential all the time, while at the same time letting RF get onto it. You're going to have to do that. That's number 2. Number 3 is that you're going to have to tether this thing. And by that, I mean you need a separate line made of something like nylon cord that will allow you to, let's just use heavy. There's the surface of the earth. Let's just use heavy green to indicate this tether. You're going to have to do that. You're going to have to make sure that if this thing breaks, and the most likely place for it to break is right there, if it's going to break, you don't want it to go flying away with all that wire on it, because God only knows where it's going to land. So you've got to tether that thing. Then if it breaks, the tether will take up the slack. But note, the tether will be loose, hanging loose normally, a lot of slack. And if this does break, it's going to suddenly pull that tight. So you're going to have to make sure that that tether is a very well built piece of hardware that will not give way in the event of a misfortune, such as a snap at this point right here. That's the most likely place for the thing to snap, particularly in a high wind, using a parafoil kite when there's a lot of force on that wire. It must be tethered. I haven't ever shown tethers on any of my videos with these antennas because it would just make the whole diagram cluttered, but you have to do that as well. And the last thing you must do is check with the Federal Aviation Administration to make sure that you do not run afoul of them by flying such a long conducting wire with a kite or balloon, particularly on 160 meters, because if it's going to get you into trouble that way, you can't do it. I know there are very specific and rather complicated regulations. You're going to have to check with them and make sure that you're within the scope of the law when you do this. So that's at least 4 precautions you need to take, and all those 4 having been given to you, notwithstanding, I do not guarantee that they are all going to provide you with the necessary protection that you need. In other words, I do not guarantee my videos. If something happens, if you fly this thing and take all my precautions and something still happens to you, it's not my fault. I've warned you. You are the one who chooses to do this. I would not do it until I am absolutely certain I've taken all the precautions I just told you, or that you've taken all the precautions I've just told you. Stan Gibilisco signing off, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV saying 73 in ham radio jargon, which means best regards, and which means in plain English, so long, and in my language, da-da-da-da-da-da.